freedom of speech. We all know we have it. It's one of our most sacred rights that we have. Let's look at some of the basics today. The First Amendment gives us freedom of religion with the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. And then it goes on to say, or abridging the freedom of speech. These 6 words is all the Constitution says about speech. But the courts have defined speech for us quite a bit over the years. Let's start first of all with the marketplace of ideas. Now this is not in the Constitution, but it is a concept that we have. And the marketplace of ideas says that think of speech like the free market, or think of it, if you will, like a grocery store. Think of it like a soup aisle. And think of each soup, cream of mushroom and chicken noodle and clam chowder. Think of them as all types of speech. We allow all of them, even the stuff that really offends us. If there's a type of soup that really offends you, for me it's onion soup. I just don't like onions. It's really, really offensive. However, it's still permitted within the marketplace. That we fight speech with more speech rather than censorship. Kind of the same idea if we think of the free market in our economic system. That we allow all products, and some will flourish, and others won't make it because people just won't buy into it, or they'll fight it with other products. Okay, speech is the same idea. We allow all speech, even the most offensive stuff, and we fight speech with more speech rather than censorship. Because if we start censoring offensive speech, pretty soon there's not much speech left. I mean, think about speech that over our history would have been offensive, and we could have banned it, censored that speech, made it illegal to say those things. How would that affect society? So speech that would have dealt with ending slavery would have been offensive at one point in time, or interracial marriage, or civil rights, or women's rights, or contraceptive rights, or same-sex rights. Any of those things would have been offensive, or may still be offensive to some people today, but they still have a place in our marketplace of ideas. They have a place where we can argue the merits of them. Rather than just say, no, you can't say this, we fight speech with more ideas, with more speech. We let it come out into the open market where it can be debated and discussed. And if it's good, if the ideas are good, then they'll flourish on their own merit. If they aren't good, if they're ideas that people don't buy into, then they will disappear. I mean, that's the theory, at least, of the marketplace of ideas. Let's not censor speech. Let's permit it all. So, we have things like this. We have, hate speech that's over here. Well, how do we fight that? Well, we haven't banned the Ku Klux Klan. But we do fight speech with more speech. And sometimes you hear people say, well, you don't have free speech anymore. You say something and it's offensive and people hammer you online and you get fired from your job. But that's not the government limiting speech. Remember, the First Amendment protects us from the government taking away our rights. So if you were fined for saying something offensive, that's the government. If you're fined at least by the United States or by the state. If you are arrested for what you say, that's your speech being limited. If people don't like you anymore, or people also, when you say something offensive and you get hammered online by it, that's not denying your speech. That's the marketplace of ideas in practice. There are repercussions for speech. Just because we say something doesn't mean that everyone has to agree to it. Society can get after us, but the First Amendment protects us from our government denying our freedom of speech. There are 2 types of speech. There's pure speech, which is simply the spoken word. That's pretty straightforward. And then there is symbolic speech. Now, symbolic speech is any action that conveys a message or statement without actually verbalizing it. So holding up a sign, or sometimes the clothes we wear. Freedom of expression falls under symbolic speech. Even things that may offend some, like flipping somebody off. That's symbolic speech, because you're getting your message across without actually verbalizing. And what's important to know is both pure speech and symbolic speech are protected equally under the First Amendment. So we have speech that we can say, but there's other ways to express our message, and that falls under free speech too. So this, these people talking, that would be an example of free speech, burning the cross by the KKK, or burning the American flag, probably offensive to most of us, both of these acts. Yet both of these are permitted, as long as they're not used as intimidation. Some more examples of symbolic speech. We don't have necessarily completely protected speech all over. Where we have protected speech is in a public forum. And a public forum is any place that has been traditionally used for free speech in America. So think of parks, think of city streets, and I think that the internet is our newest public forum. Is where do people go? Where have they traditionally gone to try to express their message, for political speech, for protest speech? Not every place that is a public place is a public forum. Certainly, think of a courthouse. That's a public building, but it is certainly not a public forum. It is not where we traditionally have gone for free speech. Neither is a cemetery. A cemetery may be open to the public, but it's not a public forum. A city street, a park, town squares, the internet, those are now our public forums. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you're in a public forum, the government cannot deny the content of your speech, meaning they can't arrest you or silence you because they don't like your message. However, they can limit the time, place, and manner that speech is given within a public forum, at least to an extent, meaning that, let's say we have a park. They could say that the park is closed from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. If you want to give a speech in that park, you can't do it when it's closed. Or place. Maybe you can't protest within 500 feet of a cemetery during a funeral. Okay, that would be limiting place. Manner, maybe you have a park that does not allow amplified speech and you want to use a bullhorn. Well, that would be limiting manner. The government can regulate time, place, and manner in a public forum, but only to the point, or not to the point, that would limit speech. They cannot limit speech because of the content of that speech. These would be public forums, or on a street, a city park. These are public forums. This is where we traditionally have gone in society to get our free speech, our ideas out. Okay? And that's some of the real basics of speech. Later, we'll look at the limitations of speech.